Ever heard the expression, failing to plan is planning to fail? Well, today we're diving deep into why that's true.
And not just like a general idea of true.
Right, like scarily true.
Yeah. Even for the most powerful leaders in history.
We're going back in time to explore the collapse of Alexander the Great's empire.
Buckle up.
But trust me, this isn't just some dusty history lesson, okay? This is about a leadership blind spot
That's right.
that's still tripping up CEOs.
Entrepreneurs.
Yeah, heck, maybe even us, like in our normal lives.
Absolutely. And what's so captivating about Alexander is that his rise and fall.
It's like the ultimate story.
It really illustrates how a lack of foresight, even in the middle of incredible success,
Like the guy was on fire, success-wise.
can just totally pave the way for chaos.
Okay, so picture this. Alexander the Great,
Okay.
conquering everything in sight, right? By the time he's in his early 30s,
He's done more than most people do in a lifetime.
his empire is massive. It stretches over 2 million square miles,
2 million.
from Greece all the way to India.
That's hard to even fathom, really.
I know, that's like a whole continent and a half, at least. It's mind-blowing.
It really is. And, governing such a vast, diverse empire, even if everything's going perfectly,
Even with like the best advisors.
it would be a Herculean task.
Totally.
But here's the real issue. Alexander's leadership, it was intensely personal.
He was young.
He was
A
young.
song larger than life, right?
He inspired this incredible, deep loyalty.
Right, people would follow him anywhere.
But he didn't seem to grasp,
Hmm.
really, the need for a system,
Like a backup plan.
a backup plan for what would happen if he wasn't around
Oh, man.
to, lead the charge.
Okay, so this is where it gets, and I mean this, like truly
Freaking.
interesting. And by interesting, I mean kind of terrifying. Imagine you're this guy, Alexander,
At the top of your game.
at the top of your game, at the helm of this massive empire. You're at the peak of your power.
Untouchable, you think.
And then, bam, you die. Unexpectedly at 32,
32.
with no clear heir and no plan for what happens next.
Chaos.
Talk about a recipe for disaster.
It's like the ultimate case study in what not to do.
Right.
It's like the ultimate leadership stress test, really.
100%.
What happens to your creation,
To your legacy.
to your legacy, to the people you lead
The people you're responsible for.
when you're suddenly not there? And in Alexander's case,
It wasn't just a tragedy, like, personally.
it was an organizational risk.
It was the abrupt opening
Yes.
of a power vacuum.
That-
So massive.
So massive.
It would take decades to even start to figure out.
It's hard to overstate the impact.
And that vacuum, that lack of a clear successor, is where the real drama unfolds.
Oh, absolutely.
Suddenly you have all these ambitious generals, the
Seeds of
Diadochi,
balance,
vying for control, like, overnight.
It's like someone fired a starting pistol.
Imagine the tension in that room,
The suspicion,
the backstabbing.
the sheer scramble for power.
It makes like a hostile takeover in the business world look like a tea party.
Oh, absolutely. This was the real deal.
And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
This empire held together on Alexander's personality
His charisma,
and his military genius
which, let's be real, it was real.
starts to fracture.
It's a stark reminder. Power, without a plan for what comes next,
Without a plan for what if.
is just inherently fragile.
Okay, so put yourself in the shoes of like one of these generals, right?
I'm trying to imagine.
You're in Alexander's army. You've been fighting alongside him.
Winning battles.
Winning battles. You've seen things, maybe you even have
Little ambitions.
a few ambitions of your own. Then, boom, your leader is gone.
Just like that.
What do you do? Like, honestly,
It's the ultimate test.
do you try to hold the empire together?
Out of loyalty,
Or do you, as they say,
when in Rome.
take the money and run?
And that is exactly the question that plagued the Diadochi.
The Diadochi.
This power vacuum, we see it play out in so many different ways.
Okay, so walk us through it.
Let's start with Perdiccas.
Perdiccas,
Blinded by loyalty,
the loyal one.
tried to rule in Alexander's name,
Risky.
and it backfired spectacularly.
No kidding.
Betrayed and assassinated.
Wow.
Then you have Ptolemy,
Okay, Ptolemy, what's his story?
the pragmatist.
Sure.
He focused on securing Egypt.
Strategic.
He understood that survival for the moment was more important than trying to grab all the power.
Smart guy.
And then there's Antigonus.
Antigonus, always trying to
Oh, he was a mover and shaker.
pull a power move, right?
He saw an opportunity and he went for it.
Yeah, he was like, Alexander who? I'm the guy now.
He definitely understood the importance of public image, right?
That's been.
Presenting himself as the true heir, the successor that Alexander would have wanted
Did it work?
for a while. He very nearly reunited a good chunk of the empire
Wow.
under his rule.
So he almost pulled it off.
He almost did.
What happened?
Well, ambition is a double-edged sword.
Isn't it always?
The other Diadochi, they saw his growing power and they got nervous.
Right, because who wants to be the next target?
Exactly.
So they teamed up.
They did, formed an alliance against him.
It's like a real-life Game of Thrones.
Oh, you said it, not me.
So much for loyalty among conquerors.
Right. It makes you think.
But, and I think this is important for our listeners, this isn't just some story about who ended up with the biggest piece of the empire, right? There's a bigger lesson here.
Oh, absolutely. This goes way beyond the history books.
Something that everyone listening can learn from.
100%.
So what is it? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
What happened to Alexander's empire is a cautionary tale
Okay.
about the dangers of thinking that leadership is all about one person.
Because one person can't do it all.
Exactly. One person is fallible.
They get sick.
They make mistakes.
They get ambitious.
They get ambitious, exactly. It's a reminder that without systems, without a plan for what happens next,
That's the key.
even the most powerful, the most successful,
The most unstoppable.
can crumble.
And this applies to
This is the part that's crazy.
everything.
To a tech startup, just as much as it did to an ancient empire.
Because at the end of the day, it's about people.
It's always about people.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, right?
What's that?
That the same forces that took down Alexander's empire are still a thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Like in boardrooms,
100%.
businesses
It's
today.
still playing out.
We might not be talking like conquering armies
Right.
and, vast territories, but
No, but the stakes are high.
the stakes are still high.
Especially, I think, in the business world, those stakes are incredibly high.
Right. Because you're talking about people's livelihoods.
You're talking about, like, the livelihoods of employees, the investors, the whole nine yards.
And it's not just about like the founder or the CEO.
It's
Right.
the thing about succession planning.
It's bigger.
It's bigger than just the person at the top.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you're a tech company,
Okay.
and you've got this one engineer,
The coder.
the coder, who knows everything.
They built it from scratch.
They built the whole thing, and then they decide,
Time to retire.
I'm going to go live on a beach somewhere.
Peace out.
What happens then?
A whole thing falls apart, right?
It can. And it happens more often than you think. And it doesn't even have to be a dramatic exit.
What do you mean?
Well, what if they, win the lottery?
Oh, wow.
Just ghost everyone.
No 2 weeks notice?
Nope. Gone. So, succession planning,
You got to think about this.
you have to. It's not about replacing people.
Right.
It's about building a system that can withstand, the unexpected.
So for our listeners who are starting to sweat a little bit, right?
That's you.
Thinking about their own businesses, their own projects.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how to do this right.
Okay, let's get practical.
So give me some examples of companies that totally nailed this.
Okay, so one of the most frequently cited examples.
That is gold standard.
Yeah, the textbook case is the transition from Steve Jobs to Tim Cook at Apple.
Okay.
Now, everyone knows Steve Jobs, right?
The turtleneck.
The visionary.
Oh,
Intense. He had this singular vision for Apple.
yeah, it's hard to imagine Apple without him, especially back then.
Exactly. And that's what makes this transition so interesting.
Okay.
Because Jobs, even with his reputation for being, laser focused on the present,
Right.
he understood. He got it.
That it wasn't forever.
He spent years grooming Tim Cook for that CEO role,
Really?
gradually giving him more responsibility.
Like a trial run.
In a way, yeah, to ensure a smooth handover when the time came.
So he's playing the long game, even with his own, position. That's amazing.
Yes, and that's a key point.
Okay.
Effective succession planning, it's about making the company's success about more than just one person.
Right. Building something that lasts.
Yes, building systems, processes, a leadership pipeline that can handle change at the top.
Okay, that's huge.
All
But
right.
not every transition
Of course,
is as, seamless as Apple.
definitely not. It's not always that easy.
So let's talk about the times when things didn't go so well.
All right, so one example that comes to mind is the Bob Iger to Bob Chapek transition at Disney.
Okay, Bob Iger, he had a good run.
He did a very successful run. Pixar, Marvel, those were all him.
Big shoes to fill.
Exactly. But the timing of his departure,
Oof, right when the world shut down.
right at the start of the pandemic, can you imagine?
Talk about bad timing. It's like studying for a history exam and showing up,
Yes.
and it's organic chemistry.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And it really highlights like a crucial thing about this whole succession planning thing.
What's that?
Adaptability.
Okay, so even the best laid plans
Even the best laid plans.
have to be flexible.
They have to be able to roll with the punches because the world
Throws punches.
throws punches.
Okay, so we've talked about the good.
The bad.
And the just plain ugly when it comes to like leadership transitions.
Right.
Let's give our listeners some actual like practical advice here.
Okay. Love it.
What can people listening do to like make sure that their business, their project doesn't go the way of Alexander's empire, right?
Okay, so I think it all starts with identifying those key players.
Key players, okay.
And I know it sounds really basic,
Yeah.
but you would be surprised
Right.
how many people, how many leaders haven't sat down and thought about who are those absolutely indispensable people.
Because we get caught up in the day-to-day, right?
Exactly. We're so busy putting out fires that we don't think about what happens if.
What if?
What if?
Exactly. Okay, so how do we do that? Like, how do we figure out who those people are?
Ask yourself a question.
Okay.
Who are the people that if they disappeared tomorrow, poof, gone?
Oh, no.
Would it cause major, major disruption?
Okay.
And it might be your head of sales. It might be your lead developer.
Right, right.
It might be the person who like keeps the office plants alive.
Keeps the morale up.
Exactly. Because sometimes those are the most important people.
Totally.
You got to understand those pressure points.
The things that, like, if they went away...
Everything falls apart.
Okay, so we've identified those.
Step one, done.
Done. Just
develop those future leaders.
So, like, train them.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But it's not about finding, like, mini-me's of your current team.
Oh, okay.
It's about building this culture of, like, growth and mentorship.
I like that.
Because if everyone is just waiting around for instructions...
Right.
The minute the leader goes...
It all stops.
Everything grinds to a halt.
Okay.
You've got to empower those people.
Give them a chance to, like, shine.
Exactly. Give them opportunities to make decisions, to try things.
They'll mess up, though, right?
They might.
Is that okay?
It's part of the process.
So it's like, you know, learning to ride a bike, I guess. You need someone there.
I love that analogy.
At first, right? To steady you.
Hold the handlebars.
Give you some tips, but eventually you got to take those training wheels off.
Let them find their balance.
Exactly. And then hope they don't, like, crash into a tree.
There might be a few scraped knees along the way.
Right. Part of the learning process.
And that actually leads us perfectly into step 3.
Okay. Hit me.
Create a timeline, right? Like a transition timeline.
So you're not just, like, springing it on people.
Exactly. No surprises.
Okay.
It's about making a roadmap.
Even if it changes, right?
Of course it's not set in stone, but you have to have some kind of plan.
So, like, going back to Alexander, right?
Yeah.
What if, instead of just, like, leaving this giant mess,
right,
he had, like, slowly given his generals more responsibility?
It's an interesting thought experiment.
Let them lead their own campaign.
Exactly. Give them a chance to prove themselves.
Without Alexander looking over their shoulder.
Exactly. Give them that space to grow.
I like it.
It's like a relay race, you know?
Yeah.
You don't just chuck the baton at your teammate.
And hope they catch it.
Right. You have that moment of synchronization.
Make sure they're ready.
And speaking of being ready, step number 4.
Okay.
Communication.
Talk to people.
Talk to people. Your team, the people you work with.
Your family.
Your family. If that's relevant, like, let them know what's going on.
Because otherwise people freak out.
They do.
Yeah.
Uncertainty breeds fear, you know?
It's like that saying, nature abhors a vacuum.
100%.
People will come up with their own explanations, and it's usually not good.
Exactly. So be open, be communicative.
Transparency.
Transparency.
Yep.
Love it. And then finally, step number 5.
Can't forget number 5.
The most important step.
Hit me.
Flexibility.
Oh, the good old expect the unexpected, right?
You got it.
Because we can make all the plans we want.
Right.
But life, the universe...
The universe has other plans.
Always has other plans.
And you can have the most incredible plan, right?
Yeah.
Super detailed, thought of everything.
Bulletproof.
But if it's not adaptable...
Right.
If you're not willing to say, okay, things have changed, we need to adjust.
Pivot.
Pivot.
Exactly. It's like having, like, a GPS, but refusing to, like, change directions.
I love that.
Even when there's, like, a 10-car pileup ahead.
You got to be willing to take the detour.
Sometimes the scenic route is the way to go, right?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because we're talking about Alexander the Great.
Thousands of years ago.
And yet here we are drawing these really practical lessons.
It's almost like history is, like, a guidebook or something, you know?
It really is. It's like this roadmap of, like, human behavior.
The patterns repeat.
They do. And it shows us that even though the world changes people, we're not that different.
So for everyone listening who's, maybe feeling a little inspired,
I hope so.
take control to build something that lasts.
Build that legacy.
You don't have to conquer the world to start planning for the future.
Nope, you don't need an empire.
Start small.
Yeah.
Think about those key players in your life, in your work, and go from there.
Start today.
Start today. And on that note, this has been The Deep Dive. Until next time, happy planning, everyone.